Welcome back, guys. Today I thought I would just bring you along. I'm just in the middle of a project trying to wrap a rifle up for an individual going on an elk hunt. I thought I'd bring you with, and it's been a while since I have done any content on the fundamentals of shooting and some tips and tricks. It's been a few years since I've updated what is on my channel, so I just thought I'd talk about some of those things and kind of put it in one little video that if you're new to long range, that it's a great video for you to watch. If you're getting a new rifle package from me and you're kind of trying to figure all the long range things out, just kind of the core fundamentals all at one place so you can watch it, kind of make sure you're doing it right out of the gate so that you can get the best results out of your rifle. And while I'm doing this, I'm also going to be validating this rifle at distance. I have a target down here at 320, I have a target at 500, and then one at 800. So we're going to make sure the curve of the bullet lands around those bullseyes. And so come along and let's have some fun. All right, this shot called for 7.3 up, 500 yards. All right, we're right beside the bullseye, just about maybe an inch to the right, which I'm very pleased with at this distance. It's a little bit breezy today. I'm not concerned about my left and rights. We're just validating our elevations. So I'm gonna shoot one more in there, see what that does, and then we'll stretch it on out. All right, so that one hit right under the bullseye, or right under that last shot. We're just a little bit low. I'm gonna validate that up. I'm gonna split the difference and come up a quarter MOA. One note I will say on this is I'm gonna come up a half MOA. One tip that I feel like helps you or myself shoot better groups is when you have a dot on a target like I have down here, instead of trying to hold in the middle of the dot, hold on the line. So I'm holding at the top of that dot so that I'm holding at the same spot every time. So I'm about averaging, the first shot was a quarter minute low, the second shot was a half minute low. So I'm gonna go up a half a minute on that. I'm gonna shoot one more in there to validate that, and then we're gonna stretch this on out. I'd say that's a bullseye. Hit exactly where I held. Because we were hitting towards the right side, hanging just right side, I held left side top of the dot, and that's exactly where we hit. So we went up a half MOA there. So all right, let's stretch this on out to 800 yards. But before we do, let's just talk about some fundamentals of shooting. I have some tips and tricks on my channel and some previous videos. You can go check that out. But I want to make some fresh content. It's been a while since I updated that. So I want to just talk about the fundamentals of shooting and how you want to set up and what you want to think and kind of the thought process of making good shots and making good shots consistently. So let's get into it. All right, so here we're set up on a bipod. I have the bottle rest. For those of you who are not familiar with this, It's a rear rest I designed a few years back. I should say I started the project a couple years back, but just became available earlier this year. It holds 28 ounces of water, has 4 different heights to it. So it allows you to really stay in your scope. It allows you to stay in your scope as you flip the bottle to the right side. And it's super stable, super stable. I've been shooting some of my best groups. I've even noticed I believe my verticals have shrunk even off of a sandbag, or using this instead of a sandbag, because there is really no give here. It's just solid, so you can't really like if you're setting on it, you're setting on it. Whether you're pushing into it or whether you're just sitting there, it kind of gives you the same reaction. So it takes some of that shooter error, maybe of inconsistencies on bag pressure, just because this doesn't really give. But it's super stable. We've taken some incredible long shots off of it and improved it. It's a phenomenal piece of equipment I believe anybody that shoots longer distances should have. Here's why. It is so important that when you're shooting long range in the field, when you have an elk or a mule deer down there at 500 plus, that animal deserves nothing but your best accuracy, because the last thing we want to do is to make a marginal shot and wound that animal, never recovered, or make it suffer for a long time. What made me, or what led me to the development of this, is I realized that so many of my customers were not setting up the same way in the field that they were shooting in practice. So for example, we're going out in the field, we have a bipod on here, we've sighted this in off of a traditional bag, but now when we hit the field, we're not shooting it off of a bag. So it's important. So I developed this so that shooters can shoot their rifles in the field, and then when you are hunting and shooting across that canyon at 1,000 yards or whatever it is, you can set up exactly the same way, because this carries your water, carries 28 ounces of water. Now you can set up the exact same way and have that repeatability. Some people think, you know, it's crazy to think about this, but your rifle moves before your bullet exits. Basically, the larger the caliber of rifle, the more it moves. Basically, the more recoil, the more movement it has. If the movement isn't same every single time, then you're going to get a different point of impact. So let's talk about setting up same every single time. Let's talk about how you can ensure that you know you're going to get that first round impact because you're doing the same thing repeatedly. The first thing that's important to note is that your rifle and everything in your body is in a straight line. So I see many shooters laying pretty catty corner to the rifle like this. And what you have now is you don't have your body mass behind the rifle, and the recoil is really just absorbed by your shoulder and your arm. If you bring your body over and get directly behind the rifle, now you have your mass. For me, I have 175 pounds directly behind this rifle. Now I'm soaking up that recoil, and it's encouraging everything to track in a straight line. If I'm laid off to the side, this is encouraging the recoil to recoil this way, which causes my shots to go left. So that's number one. Set up straight behind the rifle. Get that rifle in that shoulder pocket. Don't put it on the side. Set it in that shoulder pocket. There's this pocket right beside your collarbone and your arm. Set it right in there every single time. And I think it's even important that you try to set it in the same height. So one time you're not like, I see, especially bigger guys, really over the top of the rifle, and it's almost like you're laying on top of your stock. You want to try to not do that. You want to try to be aware that every single time you feel like that rifle is setting at the same height, if possible. Adjust your bipod, flip this to the right side to get that height the same. Here I'm laid up on this knob, so my body is actually down lower, and so that's different than if I was laying in a spot where it was kind of the other way. We never really get to pick our spots and our ideal spots because we're hunting. So make sure, and the bottle rest also gives you that ability to flip to the right height so that you can be comfortable, and then you can adjust the rest on your bipod. So that's rule number one. Rule number two for me is making sure that I'm loading my bipod. If I pull up on my target and my crosshairs are low of my target, you can pull back on this and bring those crosshairs up. But you don't want to do that, because that causes that bipod to want to hop as soon as that shot gets fired, which causes your front end of your rifle to rise, causing your shots to hit a little high. So you want to always make sure that you're pushing forward on your rifle. If your crosshairs are low, you know, move your bag or move your rest to where you can put the crosshairs maybe just a little bit high of your target and kind of push forward, and that brings the crosshairs right down into your bullseye, allowing you to have that consistency. And when you know that you're shooting off a bipod, you're shooting off a rear rest, you have that forward pressure, and you do that every single time, you're going to get that with you laid in line with the rifle. You're going to get that reaction. You're going to get that same reaction from your rifle. Your rifle's going to recoil the same way every single time. And one of the last points, I got two more points, but one of the last points is, what do you do with your left hand? So obviously you have to use your right hand on the trigger unless you're a lefty. You have to use that. You can choose to put your left hand on your rear rest. You can choose to put it on your scope. You can choose to put it here if you choose. This is how I shoot. I use my left hand. I position everything perfectly. I get the crosshairs a little bit above my target. Well, for me, I actually get the crosshairs a little bit below my target, because when I add the left hand, so now I have forward pressure in the rifle, and I add my left hand and I slowly press down until that crosshairs hits where I want to hold. That's how I shoot. Now, you don't have to shoot that way. You can shoot with your left hand on your bottle, you can shoot with your left hand up here, but whatever way and method that you choose, make sure you do that every single time. I have seen at like 700-800 yards as much as 10-12 inches of vertical difference on rifles when you go from shooting like this to shooting like this, just because the rifle is now reacting differently, which just shows you again the importance of setting up the same way. All right, and then last but not least is trigger control. I see a lot of shooters put their trigger finger pretty high on the trigger, which allows you to not really use the leverage of the trigger. Keep that trigger finger, you know, towards the lower end of the trigger, allows that trigger to feel a little bit more crisp. It'll fire a little bit quicker. But then also, don't push sideways on that trigger. Try to square up that trigger finger. For me, when I set just before I'm shooting, I actually feel the whole width of that trigger on the front part of my index finger. And I'll just hold the crosshairs right where I want it. I'll just add pressure until it fires. You do not want to finish the shot. Even this can, for people who have target panic, this can actually be surprisingly hard to do, and especially when there's a deer or an elk in your scope. But you have to trust the process. Trust the process. And when you go out in the field and you do this over and over and over, you start seeing those impacts where you want, and you start trusting the process more and more. And then when you get in the field, you just repeat it one more time and you take a trophy home. All right. Sorry for being so long-winded, but I feel like this is very key to getting the most out of your rifle. One more thing I did not mention, and I will say this yet, is the closer you are to the ground, the more stable your platform. So this little knob right here that I have gives me the luxury to really leave my bipod at the lowest position and just move back and forth until I find the spot, rather than raising my bipods, because the higher those bipods go, the more not stable I become. And so, you know, try to use the lay of the land to be able to stay as close to the ground as possible, because you will shoot just that a little bit better because of it. All right, let's stretch this on out to 800 yards, and let's see if we can shoot a group like that. All right, so now I have validated that 500 yard range, I come up with 7.75 validated. Now that that's validated, this says to dial 17.2 for 800 yards. Let's see if we're in there. I believe we have some left to right, so I'm going to hold left just about a 3/4 minute. All right, so we hit, again, I was aiming at the top of the bullseye. We are around a half MOA high, which at that distance is 4 inches high, a little bit right. I told you I was gonna hold a 3/4 minute left. When I went to shoot, I felt a little bit of wind hit me here from the right side, and so I didn't hold, I only held a 1/4 MOA left. And I should have held a 3/4 MOA, which is a good little lesson because it's so easy to allow ourselves to hold what I feel right here. But the reality is down there, from the halfway point of my target to the target, I have more wind moving left to right. I can see, I don't know if you can see in the other camera, I can see leaves falling, and the leaves that were falling just before I shot were actually moving to the right. And the mirage is moving that way. So anyway, our elevation is a half MOA high. All right, so now we came down. I came down a half MOA. See if we can validate that to get just a little bit closer. I'd say that's a little bit closer. If you've stuck around this far, just want to say I appreciate you, and just thought I'd take a few minutes out of my time and throw up some cameras and bring you along. So thanks for sticking around. Until next time, I hope you can take these tips and have just a little better success in the field because of it.